Hi, I'm Robby Wells, your 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, and I'm here on the Sports Circus with Sal, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about sports across this country, a little bit about this coronavirus, and how our country is moving forward. Sal, it's great to be here.
All right, Robby, great having you back on the show. A big round of applause for Robby Wells. Robby's a regular here on the Circus, a friend of the show, and I got to tell you, man, a very interesting guy. Real quick, let's take care of a little business. A big welcome back to everybody listening in on Magic 97.9 FM right here in Las Vegas, as well as everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates from coast to coast, and everybody watching on hotel television, as well as AAMPtv, AAMP.TV. All right. Now, we were talking a little bit, Robby, about some of these ridiculous baseball rules. Now, we're going to talk more about that, but I want you to think about just this idea of no water on the sidelines in football. Now, tell everybody about your football background, Robby.
Yeah, I was a NCAA football coach. In fact, I was the head football coach at Savannah State University. I coached at the University of South Carolina with Lou Holtz. So I've got a little bit of a coaching background on the college level.
And you're also a national champion as well.
That's correct. I did play in college at Furman University, and it's now considered the Division I FCS. But back then we were called 1AA football, and we did beat Georgia Southern in 1988, my junior year, for the national championship. I was just a walk-on player, but still, what a thrill to be a part of that team.
Imagine this. Imagine you're on the sidelines, and let's just say, oh, by the way, we're not going to allow you to have a water jug. We're not going to allow you to have water. We're not going to allow you to have anything, maybe even a Gatorade. We're not going to allow you to spit after you put water in your mouth to get your mouth moist again. You know what I'm saying? After getting off the field or whatever. Well, guess what, Robby? There's not going to be any of that. No. We don't want you to make yourself fresh, get yourself refreshed and so forth when you're on the field. We have no interest in that because guess what? You as a player, you're not important. Player safety is important. But then again, if we can't keep you hydrated, I guess that's not important. What are we talking about here?
Well, that sounds like the draconian days back when actually one of my heroes in coaching, Coach Paul Bear Bryant, was at Texas A&M with the Junction Boys. We all remember that story and how, several of those players almost lost their lives because they did not have water on the sideline. What are you going to do when it's a hot summer day? You can't ask these players to do that. That's insane.
Yeah, the players need to be able to do that. But you know what? Here's the one thing. Now, they will say that everyone is allowed to stand and so forth for the national anthem and for God Bless America. But of course, they must keep their distance during the banner presentation, etc. I mean, come on, man. We already hear about that. But now let's move a little further. Now, the fielders, of course, let's just say on baseball, we're going to see the same thing in football. The fielders, or let's just say the players, are encouraged to retreat several steps away from the base runner between pitches. How's that going to work in football, Robby?
Well, it wouldn't work very well. I'm thinking if the defensive backs or the defensive line had to actually step away from the line of scrimmage before the ball is snapped, what's to stop an offense from having a quick count? Especially if it was like 4th and 1. That makes no sense.
I see the same exact problem. Makes no sense. So the quick snap is a real thing. Just like in baseball, what do we have, Robby? We have a quick pitch. It's the same thing, right? So basically catching the other team when they're not necessarily ready.
Right, exactly. It's the same concept.
Yeah, it's a bad situation. It really is. I mean, the rules and regulations that we're hearing about are ridiculous. Let's take a pause from this because I want to take a break. And I want to talk about the idea when they have this alleged testing and so forth. Robby, what are they really testing for? Is this about a virus or is this about something else? What do you think? I mean, as a presidential candidate, Robby, you would know more than a hell of a lot more people.
We all have our theories. I've done a lot of research as much as I possibly can. I've also relied on the expertise of several people that are considered to be specialists in the field of viruses and science, as well as the medical profession. And it just seems like everything is a little bit off, Sal. And what I mean by that is almost like this pandemic, quote unquote, is being used to make everybody afraid of the boogeyman. Now, I'm not saying or diminishing the fact that people have died from this, because people have died from this. But I'm wondering, and I'm just wondering if maybe there is an agenda above this that's trying to get everything shut down so that we can move the world in a new direction, maybe a direction that we don't want to see in the United States.
Robby, are you referring to maybe a globalist point of view?
Yeah, most definitely. To a point where the United States would no longer be the United States, something like that. But not only our country, but every country.
Right. So that's that alleged one world government kind of scenario. And, the funny thing is, if you look at the way things have unfolded in different parts of the world, just sticking with that theory for a minute. I mean, look, we could talk baseball, politics, whatever, because we're on CNBC, we're on NBC News affiliates, we're on Money Matters Radio. There's a lot of different places. We're not just on sports, but you happen to be a very unique mix of a political candidate as a presidential candidate, as well as an athlete. I mean, the rodeo, right? And so we can talk a little bit of both, but I tell you, from being the fittest athlete out there, if you have this alleged virus sitting out there and you have certain people that are getting ill and they're falling to it, whatever it may be. Now, it could be a combination thereof. And the funny thing about it to me, it's not really funny, but the ironic thing to me, Robby, is that if you take the symptoms of this alleged virus and then you say, well, hey, wait a minute, isn't there something else out there that sort of mimics this alleged virus? What are we talking about? Does it have to do with technology anywhere?
Well, actually, Sal, and I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I do look at the data. And if you look at where the 5G towers are in the United States, and you put those on a map, and then you put on a map the hotspots of the coronavirus, they coincide. It's basically the same thing. So you've got to ask yourself, is this 5G technology breaking down the cells in older people and in people with pre-existing conditions to the point where the cells are broken down and people are now, their immunity system is broken down and they die? So we've got to start asking these very, very tough questions. Yes, there's a virus out here. Was it man-made? Did it come from Wuhan, China? There's actually proof that an author 40 years ago put this in a book that it was going to come out of Wuhan, China. And yet all of that seems to be swept under the rug, except for Anderson Cooper. About 3 weeks ago, Anderson Cooper did start reporting that this looks like it could have been a man-made virus coming out of Wuhan and not out of this fish market where they said it was coming from bats.
Okay, well, if that is the case, I find it remarkably ironic, Robby, that if there is this alleged virus that's sitting out there, how it actually sort of mirrors the direct effects from that 5G technology. But now let's take it a step further, because it's obvious if you're doing an implementation, I have a wireless background, if you're doing an implementation of a technology and that mirrors, or let's just say it has a set of symptoms. Now, if you go out and find a virus that has similar symptoms, and let's say the virus is manipulated a little bit to come a little bit closer to the symptoms of a technology when they're implementing it, does that sound like something that's feasible? Is that realistic? Am I just drinking the Kool-Aid on that, or what are we talking about?
Well, it seems like you and I are on the same wavelength here, Sal. Now we've got to ask ourselves why, and who would benefit from doing something like this? Who would benefit from an international vaccine? Maybe we need to start looking at someone that has been a proponent for an international vaccine over the past 4 or 5 years that would truly profit a lot of money by this happening.
Okay. You know what, Robby? Let's save that for after the break, because we don't want to get into that discussion and then have to go to a break right away. But I think you're onto something here, because it sure makes sense. Look, if you're going to have the implementation of this alleged vaccine, whatever the heck that means, into the world where, let's face it, professional sports, baseball in this country is a really big deal. Football's a really big deal. Basketball, hockey, they're big deals. If you're going to change everything about the way of life that we have for an alleged implementation of technology and the benefactor getting their vaccine out there, allegedly, we don't really know. I don't know, so I can say that. You don't know, we could say that, right? If we don't necessarily know, that's affecting a lot of our lives, from the daily workforce all the way to our daily lives themselves beyond the workforce. Tell you what, folks, we're going to be back with presidential candidate for 2020, Robby Wells, a surprise guest here on the Sports Circus. You never know what's going to happen, folks. It's a circus, and we prove it every day. Back here in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere.